these last few days. So this has been an extraordinary combination of factors here in Washington, coming together of factors. The Secretary of State was out of the country for a good deal of the last couple of days because she went over to Africa, and because her airplane broke down, she had to come back on a cargo plane. So she was not traveling on a plane with her normal communications. But the planning went on in any case, and one of the things that we've learned is that when the president was delayed in his departure on Tuesday for Martha's Vineyard, we were told he was meeting with national security officials.
Andrea,
see now that he's leaving again, yes, for Washington. But when he was first leaving, everyone assumed that the reason he was delayed was the general trauma at the White House because of the personal matters, but in fact, he was meeting with national security officials, and as you may recall, when he walked across the South grounds to go to the helicopter, he was still wearing his business suit. He had not even had time to change. So this was clearly last-minute meetings before he left for his very brief holiday of 24 hours, and then was again consulting with national security officials. I thought it was very interesting. Pete has pointed out the legal justification, which we've been discussing. I thought it was interesting that General Shelton said that while the strikes have ended, that they do not know whether they have gotten Osama bin Laden. They don't know what they've achieved on the ground. They're not going to talk about from where they flew. The nearest base would probably be Prince Sultan Base in Saudi Arabia, but it would be very difficult politically, diplomatically, for them to fly from some of these Middle East bases for this kind of operation. So if these were air attacks, as we assume they were, they might have been flying from Diego Garcia, a joint U.S.-British base. We don't have those military facts yet as to exactly where and when, but we do know that this is justified not only because of the bombing attacks but in Africa, but because they say that there have been ongoing threats that they've picked up not only from bin Laden's public statements through the newspapers in London, but also through intelligence. So we've had a good deal of intelligence, and that's one of the reasons that they say this is justified.
Andrea Mitchell, thank you. The attention also shifts now to what was minutes ago the traveling White House of this administration in Martha's Vineyard. The president is wheels up now en route to Washington. Bob Kerr standing by for us on Martha's Vineyard. Bob, walk us through the genesis and chronology of this as much as you've been told before the White House press operation flew out of there.
Well, Brian, it was certainly a shot of adrenaline here at the summer White House. Talk about changing the agenda. The president certainly reasserting himself in his role as commander-in-chief. It was a surreal early afternoon here. Mike McCurry came in to brief the press on routine matters, was standing doing just that when everyone noticed that he took what is called a silent page on his beeper, took it up and read it. Presumably it was about this, and he then went back to regular business for another couple of minutes, and then in short order was handed a note. His demeanor sort of changed a little bit, and at that point he said, ladies and gentlemen, I have an urgent piece of business to attend to, and I must tell you now that in 10 minutes the President of the United States is going to come here and address the nation on a matter of national security. So it was very surprising for us, and it looked to a degree to be a bit surprising for Mike McCurry, although as Andrea and others have pointed out, the President has been working on this ever since the bombings, really, in East Africa. It was funny, this morning also we were told that the President might go out and play golf, and when, of course, he didn't and he stayed back at the house that he's using this week in Martha's Vineyard, everybody thought, well, maybe that's connected somehow to the Lewinsky and Ken Starr business and he just doesn't want to go out. We were later told by Mike McCurry that one of the only things he did this morning was to work the phones with his national security aides, specifically National Security Advisor Sandy Berger. So I do think, though, Brian, there will be some talk about changing the agenda. Nobody is going to second guess, though, that the president has been working on this for several days, even before he testified before the grand jury the other day.
Bob Kerr in Martha's Vineyard, as Andrea Mitchell noted, and as some observers noted that day, the president did leave for vacation wearing a double-breasted suit, having clearly come from the office with his personal aide, Chris Inskov. He was seen walking from the West Wing to the east under the covered portico. We're going to go to Nairobi, Kenya. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen standing by with us on the telephone. Nairobi, of course, one of the scenes of two bombings at U.S. embassies. Ron?
of course, in hindsight, everything gets a bit clearer, and now I think back to a statement the FBI released a couple of days ago after they raided a suspected bomb-making factory, the hotel here where the suspects in the Nairobi bombing, at least, may have made their device. And then they said that the investigation had a logical pattern to it. That was based on a tip supposedly given to them by this man, Mohammed O'Day, who a week ago was a very shadowy suspect. We only had 3 aliases for him, and if you'll remember, he was only stopped in Pakistan because some border guards noticed that he had a phony passport. And if, in fact, that is part of the logical progression that has brought us to the point now of strikes in Afghanistan and Sudan, it's amazing that maybe a very lucky break, the discovery of a phony passport by a man trying to pass from Pakistan into Afghanistan, was a significant clue in this. Of course, Secretary Cohen and General Shelton made the point that there are a series of clues, a series of leads that led them not only to bin Laden but also to Sudan. Some of those, much of that information provided by bin Laden himself. There were quotes in a London-based newspaper, an Islamic newspaper, a message sent to its Cairo office just a couple of days ago warning about more attacks. So there is a trail, and it seems to be leading back here, in many instances, to Nairobi. The only other bit of information I can pass along is that the FBI chief, Louis Freeh, is in the region today. He was in Tanzania earlier today, and he toured the U.S. Embassy site there where the bomb exploded. He gave away no clue that anything significant was going to happen. As a matter of fact, he was asked about the investigation, and he said that neither of the 2 suspects in custody there seemed to be providing much detailed information at all. He was not very optimistic or said nothing very positive about the progress being made there. He's now in Nairobi. We're hearing some information that he might be on his way to the airport to get back to Washington, as the president is, because of what's happened. I think in this part of the world, as in the Middle East, a lot of American citizens are going to be concerned about safety. You heard during the news conference, the Secretary Cohen asked about the possibility of retaliation, and I'm sure that will be on the minds of a lot of Americans who are abroad these days. Brian?
Ron Allen in Nairobi for us. We'll talk a lot more during this day and evening about who is bin Laden. Just a brief biographical note: 52 siblings, 28 brothers, 24 sisters, 4 wives, 10 children, oldest believed to be about 17. He travels by private jet, uses an encrypted email system, is as thoroughly modern as anyone else in the West, and has been targeted by U.S. intelligence officials as one of the most fiendish threats to national security. We're going to go to the Pentagon. Joe Johns has been reporting there for us. Joe, the big question mark in the briefing, because they didn't want to endanger any operations currently going on, evidently, how these strikes were carried out. We're generically calling them military strikes for the moment.
Right, we're not getting a lot of detail on exactly how they were carried out and where they came from, in fact, but there has been just a few minutes ago a briefing here off camera by senior intelligence officials who have been able to put a little bit more in context. One of the things people have been saying here, obviously, is that these attacks came completely out of the blue. Well, the senior intelligence officials told reporters that there was convincing, they say convincing information from a variety of sources that bin Laden is responsible for the bombings at the embassies in Africa. Used the words high confidence. It was bin Laden's organization. They talked a bit about the pharmaceutical facility that was hit, said once again that it was making a chemical that is used to make VX. Some other information we got, they called it compelling information, apparently information that had been gathered very quickly about bin Laden, and most interestingly, I think, from the briefing that was off camera that Americans did not get to hear, was that they say there was credible information that there would be more terrorists in the camps today than would be otherwise expected. So that gives us a little clue as to the timing, Brian.
Joe Johns, thank you. Andrea Mitchell has more to add from Washington on exactly the groups we're talking about here.
Well, one of the things that we should remind people of is the high risk here, because we know that bin Laden's group at this particular base camp and the surrounding support facilities are armed with Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. supplied by the United States of America when they were fighting against the Soviets in Afghanistan. So one of the things that they had to be very concerned about, no doubt, was what kind of anti-aircraft fire there would be, and presumably that had a lot to do with the timing of this particular hit. As Joe was just pointing out from his briefing, the fact that more people would be in the camp, in the surrounding area, could well be because we had seen and we'd been told for a number of days that after the bombings there's been a lot of activity, both before and after the bombings in Africa, a great deal of activity around those base camps. So they've been tracking that pretty closely. It tells you that we do have better intelligence to carry this kind of thing off, if it was carried off successfully, than some people, critics at least, had feared. About Sudan and the attack on Khartoum, Sudan since 1993 and 94 has been listed as a terrorist sponsoring state by the U.S. government in the State Department's annual report. The Khartoum facility was, as Joe has pointed out, supposedly producing chemicals that are precursor chemicals for VX, which is one of the deadliest of gases. And we've been told by our sources, our intelligence sources, that in fact there was an Iraqi component to all of this, that Iraq was involved in helping Sudan set up that facility.
Andrea Mitchell in the Washington Bureau. And just to recap here briefly, the president is in midair at this point, just south of Massachusetts, near the Connecticut line, presumably. He is expected, after landing at Andrews, choppering to the south lawn of the White House, he is expected to touch down on the lawn at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time. It's now 2:54 or thereabouts Eastern Time, so we're talking about an hour and change now. He is on, again, a smaller and less quick DC-9 aircraft. We want to talk to Richard.
Criminal investigators have found in Kenya or Tanzania, but based strictly, or I should say mostly, on what defense intelligence agencies have told him and what the CIA has told him. Because FBI officials in Kenya have made it clear now for some time that they are far, far away from being able to point specifically to anyone having responsibility for this bombing. Although I think I and surely other of our colleagues were struck by the suddenness with which intelligence sources were telling us within days of the bombings in East Africa that this was Osama bin Laden, and make no mistake about it. They were absolutely certain on that fact. They were even giving us such details as the fact that bin Laden had associates known to have been in Kenya shortly after those explosions took place and before. They were also telling us about movements in his camps in Afghanistan, the very same camps, Dan, that were bombed today. There's one other point I think to be made here. Questions were raised in the Pentagon briefing. They were certainly not answered, and they will have to be raised again, and that is, how effective could these strikes be against us, an organization that's spread throughout the Middle East? He has followers, Osama bin Laden, I should say, has followers in 7 of the nations in the Middle East. They're expected to number between 4,000 and 5,000 at the latest count. They are armed with everything from surface-to-air missiles to tanks, and they are operating off a budget from his personal fortune estimated at $500 million. This is not something that a handful of airstrikes are going to eradicate. Dan?
Jim Stewart in Washington. You may want to note that on Tuesday, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright began discussing using the Taliban, that's that radical Muslim group in Afghanistan, to secure the capture of bin Laden. He's the Saudi who's wanted by the United States. However, she was rebuffed. In April, Bill Richardson, then the United Nations ambassador, met with Taliban leaders to discuss turning over bin Laden, but the Taliban leaders refused to do that. Let's go quickly to Bob Schieffer, who's in our Washington Bureau. Bob?
Well, Dan, the only thing I would add is it's apparently going to be a while before we find out whether these strikes were successful or what damage they did inflict. You'll notice all during these briefings, neither General Shelton nor Defense Secretary Cohen gave any kind of an assessment. Well, it's now dark in that part of the world, and so it's going to be a while before they can get reconnaissance planes up there to see what kind of damage was done. I must say there's another odd thing that strikes me about this, Dan. I can never recall an announcement like this when the information was so closely held that the officials would not say whether it was a ground force or air strikes. It appears to me these were either cruise missiles or bombers. Dan.
Bob Schieffer in Washington. Our CBS man in Jordan reports that Sudan TV has issued a long statement which mentions an American missile attack, but that's the Sudan version. Witnesses said that they heard aircraft. We simply don't know how the U.S. military has struck, but we do know they have struck in Sudan and Afghanistan against terrorist redoubts. Coming up, President Clinton will address the nation sometime later this afternoon or this evening. We'll have complete details on all these developments on the CBS Evening News and an update tonight on 48 Hours at 10 Eastern Time. Until then, Dan Rather.
This has been a CBS News special report.
The latest Italian imports have arrived for Jennifer Leather's exclusive Bellissimo collection. 100% imported leather sofas from Italy for only $5.99. So feel the passion of leather. Jennifer Leather.
I'm Elaine. I'm a cable therapist.
Yes, cable TV, right?
The left brain says I don't watch enough TV for cable to be worth it. The right brain wants all the channels. This is an inner conflict. Technical term.
I say explore the deep blue with nature shows on Discovery. USA means US Open.
Yes.
Comedy Central, Primal Laugh Therapy. Say I love classic TV with Nick at Night. Get Yankees baseball on MSG. Oh, group hug, that's nice.
Hello? Don't you deserve more from the time you do spend watching TV? Say it for me. I can get cable.
Call 1-800-OK-CABLE and connect to cable for only $9.95 when you take 2 select premium channels for the price of 1. Just $9.95 to have it all.
I'm a people person.
Cable makes them smile at me and say, thanks, Elaine.
Call 1-800-OK-CABLE today and see what you're missing.
This Sealy living room will just blow you away.
It's Jennifer Convertible 7-piece Sealy package. A Sealy sofa bed and love seat for only $7.99 with 3 tables and 2 lamps absolutely free.
Jennifer Convertibles, America's largest sofa bed specialist.
Monica's back in court. More trouble for Clinton? Find out at 5.
From Studio One in Burbank, California, it's the Howie Mandel Show. Today, please join Howie as he welcomes the star of Wrongfully Accused, Leslie Nielsen. From How Stella Got Her Groove Back, Regina King. From The Parent Trap, actress Lisa Ann Walter. And of course, Steve Goldstein and the Studio One Band. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Howie Mandel!
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that's too much. Settle down. Oh, come on. Have a seat. Wow, that's nice. I'm Howie Mandel, and I'll be I never really understand that second wave. Nothing more happened. I'm Howie Mandel, and I'll be your host for this hour. You know what? If anybody needs me, I'll be right here. I think I should let people know I'll be right here for the rest of the day, and then tonight I open at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Tonight I'll be opening Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. You know that and I'll be there through Sunday. Do you know that Las Vegas is a Spanish word? I think it's a Spanish word, right? And it means probably the Vegas. I don't know. Does it mean something? I don't know what Vegas means. Does it mean? I just find Vegas a very funny place. It's a wonderful place. I enjoy being there. I enjoy performing there. But they have, they have those drive-through. Have you heard of this? What are you guys talking about? You guys are telling secrets. What are you talking about? What were you saying? What were you saying? Go ahead. You can tell me.
Told her to smile.
What?
Told her to smile.
You told her to smile? Why?
Because you're on TV.
Oh. But you got to wait for me to say something that merits a smile. You know, if you're just sitting there smiling and nothing's happening, it doesn't look as good. Then if I say something and it's mildly amusing, then smile. You shouldn't just smile for no reason at all. Smile, you're on TV. That's great. Well, we'll just keep a camera on you for the entire show until your cheeks freeze and you're like that for the rest of your life. Have you been to Las Vegas?
Yes.
Yes. Las Vegas has those drive-through. Have you heard of this? The drive-through wedding chapels? Mm-hmm. Yes? You heard of that? They now have it. You can go there and get married in a regular, but they have the drive-through wedding chapels. They really do, where you can drive through. I don't understand the concept here. I really don't understand it. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying I don't understand it. I think I understand where people fly off to Vegas and get married on the spur of the moment. I think that's romantic. You know, you go, honey, I can't wait. Let's do it now. You don't want to go through all the planning and everything. Let's just get married. But how do you convince a woman, how can you convince a woman that the drive-through will be better? How do you convince a lady to say, because I know my wife, she would never go, honey, I love you. I love you. I want to spend the rest of your life with, the rest of my life with you, but you know what? I don't feel like getting out of the car. I'll give you my life. But if we just, how do you explain that? What woman in her right mind is going to go to a drive-thru? And what is the wedding like? What is the wedding like? I don't like drive-thru so much. I'd rather go in, even with the restaurant. You know that even in the wedding, they're going to forget when you leave. They're going to probably forget to put the license in the bag. They're always going to forget something. You always leave and you go, they didn't put in the, we'd like to get married. I said we would like to get married. Do you, Howie, take care of your furniture? Pardon me? Do you take care of these This is no good. Let's go in. So then you go in, you go hi, and he goes, come on. See what I was talking about? Because even when you went inside, the voice was still goofy. See what I did? Vegas is also, I read that there's a new law there that the city council has passed a law against the amount of sodding that they're allowed to have on the front lawn. They're not allowed to put too much sod on the front lawn. They're not allowed to have too much grass. This is a new law that is being passed in Las Vegas. This is the town that allows 24-hour gambling, drinking, prostitution is legal, but you put down too much grass, you're in trouble. You're in trouble if you have your lawn. Very good. I was thinking about, but we don't have time after the show. I wanted to drive. Has anybody driven to Las Vegas? I wanted to drive. Yes? It was fun? Is it fun? It's hot. It's very hot. Well, speaking of hot, when you pass, I think it's in Baker, California, they have, in Baker, they have that thermometer. Did you see that giant thermometer? They have there's a two-story, it's the biggest thermometer in the world. It's a two-story, what are you saying? In the world? In the biggest thermometer in the world. What is it, like 2 stories, 30 feet tall? Pardon me? It's supposed to be 13 stories. Right.
I think it is 13 stories.
It is 13 stories. How do you know so much about it, sir?
It was on the radio while we were driving there.
You were driving there and you heard it on the radio.
Last week.
Pardon me?
Last week.
What a coincidence. Who knew that last week you would be passing it, and this week... You know what bothers me about a 13-story thermometer? It's actually a rectal thermometer. But they don't say that when you're passed out. It's not. I take that back. Moving on. I'm moving right along now because I shouldn't be talking like that. I read an article recently that the average woman in the course of her lifetime eats 4 pounds of lipstick. Do you know that you ingest 4 pounds of lipstick? The average woman eats. And I was thinking, after I read this, I thought, and maybe I'm just saying this because I love her, but my wife, I think my wife is like way above average. I think that she, as a woman, that she's way above average as far as I'm concerned. So can you imagine how much lipstick she's eating?